Welcome to the Unpacking Life podcast. This is a podcast where we deep dive into topics some people think about in their head, but never say out loud. We discuss common problems, issues, conflicts, and grey areas in life in order to find the solutions together. Today, the question is, what is the problem with most modern day relationships? And today we've got Olivia Towers, who's been a guest before, but if you don't know, she's a massive influencer within the equine sport world and also just in general in vlogging. And she's also a very determined, motivated and focused young lady. So how you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Very excited to talk about the topic.
Yeah, it's a deep one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really good. Really good.
Yeah. So because you're in the dating world still, obviously I'm married. You're still in the dating world. You're going to have a perspective of you've actively been dating. Like I haven't been dating for over how many years? 15 years. I've been married 9. We was together for a good amount of years before that. So I've been out the game for ages. So for you, you're coming from a real relevant perspective. Obviously, I've got friends that are still dating now, and I'm still up to date on what's going on and what the issues and all that type of stuff is. But you're actively still dating, so to speak. So you're coming from that perspective, aren't you?
I know. I'm just lucky you that you're not in it. It's some people love it, don't they? But I just,
that's it.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. So what would you say are the main struggles that you come across when it comes to dating? First of all, when you think of dating, define dating. What would you?
Well, that's it. Where do you define dating? Because it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, people all have a different they look at it through a different lens, don't they? They see it in a different way. So some people think we're dating if we've gone out once and had a drink. Some people think we're dating if, we've been seeing each other for 3 months. So firstly, there's no black and white, is there, within that? And so we're all kind of going off what we think it is. And it's just, I think everyone brings so much emotional baggage to it as well. And from past experiences, everyone brings that into it. It's just hard, really hard.
So what do you think? What do you think is for your age range now, do you think is the hardest thing about dating?
Okay, so I think the problem is there is so much choice in the fact of now with dating apps, there is so much more available to people. I'm not saying all the options are great, because they're not, but you get so many more options. Whereas even when I first started dating, when I was 17, 18, I don't think dating apps were around then. And it would literally just be if you bumped into someone in a bar, not a bar, because I wasn't in a bar at 17. You know what I mean? If you bumped into someone, then you'd speak to them that way, and it was longer between meeting people. So I guess you kind of appreciated it more in a way and didn't just take that I don't know, I think it's you take the people for granted on the dating apps. You're just flicking through. I think that's really, really tough now. And I find it really frustrating as well, because it's such not that physical attraction isn't important, it is really important, but it's literally off that, isn't it? You don't see someone's body language on a dating app, you just see a picture they've chosen. You don't hear their voice, you don't hear anything about them, you don't see their mannerisms. So people can literally fake it for ages. Obviously you find out when you start meeting them, but I mean there's loads of things wrong with it. It's really, really difficult.
In comparison to how it used to be done, if you look at most relationships, the majority of older people, grandparents, parents, they've been married for 30, 60 plus years, depending on how old the parents and grandparents are. But in today's day and age, it seems like most relationships aren't lasting over 5 years. The average relationship. So why do you think that is? Why do you think, what do you think some of the key factors are to that?
I think there's a huge thing, isn't there, with the way the media and social media portray the perfect relationship, and everyone then wants that. And
Mm.
I find myself doing it as well, even though I'm well aware of what's going on. You know, the like Instagram couple, like it's the hashtag couple goals, isn't it? You see them
Yeah, yeah,
and people see the glamorous side and they go, then they look next to their partner sat on the sofa who's like in her pajamas, you know, like messy bun, eating some ice cream. And they're like, even if they love them and subconsciously, like they probably not doing it subconsciously, they're like, oh, I want that. And I like, she's not giving me that, or he's not giving me that. And then they kind of go, well, I can find that elsewhere,
yeah,
because it's the way movies and the media and social media portray these relationships.
yeah,
And it's difficult, isn't it? Because you, with this, you know, when people are real on social media, there's only so much realness you can show within a like intimate personal relationship. There's some stuff you can't put on the internet. And
yeah,
I don't think that would be healthy anyway, to put, you know, moments where you just spend with that person. So then it's difficult, isn't it? Because we're not going to ever get a 100% overall view of what a kind of like a real relationship looks like from the
yeah. True,
internet.
true. So there's a lot of comparison going on online. There's a lot of
Exactly.
like comparing, and often we're comparing to a standard that isn't realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And then also on top of that, you've got reality versus online, because obviously a lot of people show, you know, the greatest things online, but what goes on behind closed doors isn't always accurate to what they're showing online.
That's so
And
true.
it's a bit of that as well, isn't it? But
Mm.
what would you say? I mean, personally, I think one of the biggest things for me that I see, especially when I'm speaking to my friends, because I've got a number of friends that are single still, and the kind of in and out relationships. Some have got kids, some haven't.
Mm.
So they've been around, so to speak, because obviously they're my age, like 30 to 34 kind of age.
That's so nice
And
of you to say. No, I'm joking, Karen.
and so they're used to, like, you know, um having no commitment, so to speak.
Mm.
So what I think one of the main problems that I see is there's no commitment, in the sense of, you know, someone can be in a long-term relationship. There's no hold bars, like sex before marriage, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's no reason for someone to make that commitment. Do you
Mm.
get me? It's almost like the first thing that happens within dating that I see often is, you know, it's the physical attraction. That's
Yeah.
the first thing that most people go off, like the looks, and see something they like, and then they think, oh, I'll approach them, and then build
Mm.
off that. And then often it leads with, like, you know, people get to know the physical body before they get to know the internal spirit or mind of the person.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the number one reason, simply because, like, you know, people just don't speak to each other enough. Communication's a key, like in relationships. And I think asking the relevant questions, like the deeper questions, more meaningful questions in life, like, isn't done.
Mm.
Like
So
the amount,
so
what
true.
do you think, in a sense
But
of like your
as,
friends?
as you're just saying this, I don't even need to say my friends. I can use the old me and the new me as an example, which is
Yeah,
great because
perfect.
they're like polar opposites.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think about when I was dating when I wasn't a Christian, and that is literally the big turning point with all this. I think I would have still been carrying on the way I was before if I hadn't become a Christian. And for me, when I used to date people, I would purposefully avoid knowing them in that vulnerable way because it made me uncomfortable. I
mm,
wanted to like ignore it. And so I would skip dating, you know, like where you're just talking to that person. I would purposely try and get past that, sleep with them, because it was like it was this thing of I don't know, I didn't want to open myself up, like, which is hilarious, isn't it? Because then you go and get like undressed with someone and like have sex with them.
yeah,
And like our culture just hasn't made that seem like a vulnerable thing. That's
yeah,
less
yeah, yeah,
scary than actually talking to someone about what my biggest weaknesses, or like what's my fear, or what do I struggle with. I wouldn't
yeah,
want to do that. What I would do is mold myself to who I thought they wanted me to be, because it was safer. But then 6 months into that, I'd go, I'm really unhappy because I haven't been myself. I don't know that person. They don't know me. And we are so not meant to be together.
yeah,
And now we're stuck in this weird relationship, and I'm going to have to hurt them. They're hurting me. And it was chaotic and horrible. But I just did not want to show that side of me, because I didn't even want to show myself that side, let alone someone else.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that's where it comes into a deep thing, isn't it? If you're not being honest with yourself or vulnerable with yourself, or like you love yourself, how can you do that with another person? And I think that's the big thing with our culture now. It's that relationships are so put on a pedestal that we don't want to be by ourselves and go through that uncomfortable stage. We just jump
So it's
straight into
almost
relationships.
it's almost like you just want to be accepted, and you don't want to be yourself in the beginning originally.
Yeah, literally, yeah. I was
Yeah.
trying to like fake it, like
Yeah.
who I was, which is so
Yeah.
weird. I remember there was one of my first boyfriends was a football fanatic, and I remember I would watch football. I would then go and play it. I would like learn everything about it so that I could.
How old was you at this point?
16, I think, when I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, you're really impressionable, aren't you, at that age?
Yeah.
And he, honestly, awful. Awful person. He's probably changed, but I remember we went to a football match and there was like a riot, and I like got straight in there. I think I'd watched Green Street. You know, is it Green Street with the football hooligans?
Yeah.
And I
No
was
way,
like,
can't picture
yeah,
that.
I was like, I'm gonna just, I don't know, I just seemed to go forget who I was and become the person I thought they wanted me to be. Again, because you don't want to show who you are, because it's that, is it acceptable, is it lovable? So I'll just morph myself into that person.
Was
Whereas
you like that with your friendships, sorry? Like, was that the same with your friendships? Did you
yeah,
take the same? Yeah. So it was all around, really, that like, you were scared to be yourself
yeah,
and have that level of intimacy where, people know the real you. Because that is intimacy, isn't it? It's
yeah,
intimacy isn't just a sexual thing, where most people think intimacy is sex.
yeah,
That's the first thing that comes to mind.
yeah,
But there's different levels to intimacy, and you can be intimate with friends. Like, that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
intimacy basically means closeness, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you were scared to be close to people emotionally. So physically, that was kind of like a distraction, and it
Mm,
disguised who you really was.
yeah. And I had no idea I was doing this as
Yeah.
well. I wasn't consciously going, I'm gonna do it. It just what, it was like a coping mechanism. You sometimes, when you don't realize you're doing a coping mechanism, you never knew it was that, you thought it's just who
Yeah.
you are. And then it all got flipped on its head when God was like, no, I don't want you to sleep with people before marriage. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, how on earth do you do this? I was like,
Yeah.
it must be joking. I was like, so weird. I was like, that's just not right.
Mm,
And then I had no choice.
yeah.
Because there's, if you're not being yourself, and I guess it just brings out more stuff when you're not you're not distracting yourself from it, and there's not like this haze of like being like, sleeping with someone. I think this haze comes over you and you end up
Yeah.
being like, I love this person, and it's like, no, you're
Yeah.
just, because you've slept with them now, you're like, whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't have that. There's no like smoke screen up, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard.
So that is a major thing, isn't it? If you're going straight in for like, sleeping with someone, and it's like that's almost kind of like when you get married, the thing to seal the marriage is when you like, later on in the night, you basically come together and become one.
Yeah.
Like, and if you're doing that in the very beginning, that's going to model signals and messages, not even just like emotionally with you, but also chemically within the body, which is deep when you think about it. Because I mean, even when you think of sex itself on a chemical level for the body, it does so much to the body, and a lot of people don't actually realize. As much as people say, like one night stands and all that work and they think it works and all that, there is emotional attachment, like on a chemical level. Whether you like someone or not, there is a chemical level. And there's actually a drug, I forgot the name, not a drug, there's a chemical within the body that releases during sex, oxytocin.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it,
it.
oxytocin. And it's called the love hormone. And basically, for women, most of the time, it breeds like an attachment. So it makes people feel like they're attached to that person, and it brings closeness. Whereas for a male, it's more protective. So a male could sleep with someone, then all of a sudden they become possessive. But if you don't balance it out, like that's what it does. But it's because of the hormone release within the body.
Yeah.
And you got to think, if you're starting with that and you haven't got to know someone, that's obviously going to muddle your emotions. So that's why they say, like, love and emotions cloud your judgment, don't they?
Yeah.
Because often it's on a chemical level. and we don't even realize that on a chemical level we're going one way, but really we can't stand the person because they don't agree with our morals and values.
Mm.
Do you get me? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like we're being pulled in two, isn't it?
It's only getting worse as well. I don't know what it was like back in even like the 60s, but I can't imagine they were sleeping with each other as quickly as we do now.
No, not at all. That's the thing. I mean, back then it was like, it's frowned upon if you was pregnant and you wasn't married. Like,
Yeah.
you'd be the outcast of the family, wasn't it? Like that's what it was back then. I'm not saying it should go back to that.
No,
So to
no,
speak.
definitely not. There shouldn't be that judgment there and that harshness,
Yeah,
but there should be that education on it. And I
exactly.
think it's like a pendulum effect, isn't it? Because people were harsh and horrible and nasty, people have then swung the other way
Yeah,
now and gone, no, like be free. And I think we missed the point. It wasn't about, no, we should be able to not that you should stop people, we're all got our own free will, but it's educating people on why it's not a good idea. We can do that now. Like even at schools and stuff, they don't teach kids the negative, like emotional. They teach them about getting pregnant, but they don't know what's going to happen if you sleep with that person emotionally.
That's it. And I mean, it comes to something that we talked about a bit on the last podcast as well, when we was talking about, like, when you sleep with someone, they've got an emotional tie to you. So when they walk in a room,
Yeah,
like that you
scared me
automatically
so much when I found that out. I was like, makes sense though.
Yeah, it does. And it makes sense when you think about the term like two becoming one. There must be a link, because why is that kind of
Just
language
fancy your
used?
Spice Girls. Sorry. No.
See, that weren't on my playlist, that weren't back in the
Oh
day.
no.
But yeah, like it's true. And I think another thing as well, I think intimacy, the understanding of intimacy and what it is, like he says, you were scared to be intimate on an intellectual level, on an emotional level, and just being you. Like, and I think that's the deeper way to be intimate is that, I think,
Yeah.
personally. I mean, even for me, like when me and my wife, when we stopped having sex before marriage, because we didn't always follow sex before marriage.
Yeah.
But when we stopped, it allowed us to be more intimate on a deeper level. And it allowed us to explore what is real intimacy on every type of level, like physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. Like there's so many different ways that you can be intimate with people, but the majority of people just don't know how, and they're not comfortable with it, and they're not real. They're not themselves, kind of thing, because they're scared to leave themselves vulnerable. But I think once you understand that, that automatically brings a closeness that is going to be able to work through whatever trials and whatever problems that you get, because you will get them. Everyone gets them. Like you need to be strong and close together and fully understand each other in order to work through that. Whereas today, because no one's made that commitment, and you could just say, yeah, it's done, it's over, and walk out. Like people are doing that, like, because it's the easy option, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we're more of a selfish culture and generation now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not everyone, because you can't put everyone in the same box. But I think it is that we're more like going after to make ourselves happy. Yeah.
Definitely.
I definitely see that. Because the thing is with the relationship, it has to be, there's sacrifice, isn't there? Within, you have to sacrifice certain things, whether that's time, money, energy, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're opening yourself up to that person, and they can hurt you. So that's a sacrifice. I just think there's so much, and people don't want to do that.
Yeah. That's the
Which I
truth.
get, because I used to be. I think it's changing. I mean, I still sometimes catch myself being like this is being really honest, was talking to someone, and they mentioned something about having like a health condition. I went, oh, that would affect me loads. I wouldn't, that would like hold me back. And then I was like, oh, okay, that's different, because I had like literally just spoken to the person. It's not like I'd been in a year relationship with them and then they'd had that. But even then, I'm like, how would I feel if my partner got a serious health issue?
Yeah.
Because it's going to have a big impact on you, isn't it?
Yeah, it
and
is.
a lot of people would, and they wouldn't want to admit it. A lot of people would be like,
yeah,
I'm out.
yeah,
It
it's true.
sounds horrible.
Yeah. I mean, health obviously is important. And I mean, I think that is something back in the day, they did used to look on things like that. Like, what is your social status? What is your, your long-term goals? All this type of stuff. What is your health? All
Mhm.
this type of stuff would normally typically come about through courtship. So
Yeah.
back in the day, they had courtship where, you get to know the person. What do they stand for? What do they believe in? Like, you kind of almost working through intimacy at that stage, but
Yeah.
it's more the mental intimacy, and you're getting
Yeah,
to
like
know
as a
someone.
friend, like more of a friendship than.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can be intimate through friendship. I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and we got into a discussion, and we were saying, like, can you be intimate with another female? Like, is that allowed if you're a male? And like, there was mixed feelings, because obviously most people, when they hear intimacy, it's like, nah, you can't be intimate with somebody else and like you're married, and it's a female and you're a male. Do you get me? It doesn't seem right. Some people are like that because of the way intimacy is used, the context that it's used
Yeah.
nowadays. And that's the problem. Whereas real intimacy is just closeness, isn't it? It's just literally like, getting to know someone, understanding how they see the world and what makes them tick. Do you get
Yeah.
me? But it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you understand someone on that deeper level, that there's something emotionally, like you want that person, like you desire them the same way you would a partner. Do you get me? It's just that you're close with that person. And I mean, I think that's the key to having good personal relationships, friendships as well, like having that intimate knowledge of who they are, and they need to understand who you are.
Mm.
'Cause how else can you support each other and work with each other, and like, bring value to each other's life, unless you understand that? Do you
Yeah,
get me? So when it
definitely.
comes to like courtship's gone, really, if you think about it. Like, courtship is literally like, it's only really Christians and the odd few people. You don't necessarily need to be Christian to do courtship, but it's those that have had it passed on through, an adult
Mhm.
teaching them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at today, most people, if they're honest, they learn about like intimacy, what they think is intimacy, like sex through porn. Like,
Oh,
they
I know.
very rarely talk to their parents. The amount of people, and I was talking about this the other day, the amount of people that like I've spoke to, and you ask them, where did you learn sex from? And they're like, well, my mom just told me, like, just use a condom, and like, just like, don't break no hearts and all that kind of stuff. Like, if you do, like, they says don't do it, but they know that you're gonna do it. So they just give you the rough guidelines, but they don't talk about, what is the real intimacy? What should you be doing? How should you treat a man, a woman, or anything like that? Because
Yeah.
they're scared to have that communication with their parents. So it's almost like you don't have intimacy with your parents.
Yeah.
Do you get me? Like, which is another thing. Like, how are people parenting? Like, are they really intimate with their child? Do they really speak and disclose the majority of things when they ask? Do you get me? Like, and it's all those kind of things. But what do you think in terms of like, friendships, for example? Do you think it should be a friendship before it becomes a relationship, or do you think like you can't be in the friend zone and then move to a relationship, or what do you think in terms
Yeah,
of
I
that?
think that friend zone stuff's all a load of like
Yeah,
stupid. Well, I personally think it is.
yeah,
I think that's just people never liked them, and they just want to like it's a cop out, isn't it?
yeah,
Like we've been friends for way too long. I couldn't imagine anything else. No, you just never liked that person. That's fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I just never want to offend the other person. I think that like how I'm going about dating now, and COVID's been like really difficult because you can't literally meet anyone face to face at the moment, which is fine. But everyone who I've spoken to, I've like said straight up, I want to be friends with someone first. And
mm,
if they haven't got the patience to do that, I'm like, bye then, because like
yeah,
why? I always think as well, it's only to you only need to find that one person. It's not like not like you have to find the new one every year. So
yeah,
why
yeah,
take your time finding the right person? And I was actually speaking to someone the other day, and he was saying it's so much better to not give too much of yourself away when you're doing this dating business or courtship, because it's less painful then when you separate or when you part ways or say like this isn't working. You haven't given loads to that person already. So I think for me, friendship's really important. Because again, you don't get blinded by certain things. And I think what I found really hard is, and I do it all the time, is my imagination runs off with me and I start making that person into something that I'd want them to be. And being like, you know, where you can like, yeah, you create a character for someone else.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then I think you need to have that friendship time to actually figure out what their character is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up getting like really annoyed, and you're like, "Well, you don't do that." And I'm like, "Hold on, how do I know they don't do that? Because I don't actually know them. Like, I've made them into that person." So yeah, for me, friendship's really important as well. I think the great thing about my faith, being a Christian, is there's not that panic of going, oh my goodness, if I don't sleep with them, they're going to just like walk off or go and get impatient. And there's not that, how long should I leave it? I remember always having that conversation with my friends. Like, some would say like 3 months, some would say like 3 dates. And I was like, where do we go? So yeah, my faith side of it's really enabled me to be able to do that friendship. Which is really nice.
Sense. Yeah. So in terms of like you mentioned, expectations, do you think expectations of today is like, you know, sex is an expectation after, say, like 3 months, 3 dates, or even sometimes the first date? Do you think that's a big part in why people, like, you know, they get involved, they have sex, then next you know it's a relationship that shouldn't have really been a relationship? And as a result of that, they pick up issues along the way. Like, obviously, if you have a bad relationship and, like, you know, you're just not meant to be together, you clash. One person might be controlling, one person might be a bit more laid back, but they end up cheating. That affects you, and then you then take that to the later relationship. So would you say, like, picking up baggage, from emotional baggage from those types of things, hinder people's relationship when they do find a person that is meant to be the one?
And this is why I got like put in I say put because God put me in it, put in a season of singleness, because I had so much baggage piled up. So much that I had not dealt with, because my way of healing from past relationships would be to find the next one, because it was so painful. I hated that feeling. It almost felt like grief. Well, I guess it is if the relationship's ended. And so I was like, I need something to numb it. How do we do that? We'll go on to the next one. And so I sort of was like, imagine someone running on a treadmill too fast, like stumbling and tripping over. That's what I kind of was like, oh. And I just thought I could end up in a good relationship. It's funny looking back at it. It was never going to work. But yeah, I carried baggage on from past relationships. So for example, like, I was cheated on in 2 relationships I had, but I never worried that my next boyfriends would cheat on me. That wasn't a thing.
How old was you at that point? The first one. How old was you at the first one?
I think I was, no, okay. So I think the main one was when I was 22. That was not really hurt because we'd been in a relationship for a year. But before that, it probably, well, for me, it felt like cheating because we were dating, sleeping together, but we weren't official, but then they would be with other people. But for me, that felt like a betrayal. So it probably actually was once in a serious relationship. But then the next boyfriend I got, I wasn't like, oh, I'm scared they're going to cheat on me. But the deeper level of this is because I dropped my standards, because the guy who cheated on me was like, he looked like Daniel Craig, so good looking and just such a charmer. Like he was the Instagram couple goals guy, but he obviously had some deep stuff going on underneath, and it all came out when he had cheated. But after that, I say I wasn't worried people weren't going to cheat on me, but it's because I dropped my standards massively. Because I went, do you know, I had the worst, it was the worst advice. Someone said to me, there's someone I looked up to, she was like, the problem is you're going for people who are too good looking and they're going to hurt you. So go for someone lower and they won't. Yeah. I don't know why I should dating like advice from them, because they have not got a good track record. But
mad, isn't it? It's mad as some people do think, but that's again like
it's
Yeah, that
people's
stuck with me for
expectations.
ages.
Yeah. Like I would have even thought of that back then. If anything, it's like, I mean, it depends on what you like as a person. I mean, I was always someone, if anything, I was overconfident.
No.
Like I was overconfident, and it's like it was arrogance as well when I was younger.
Yeah.
I was very arrogant in the sense of like, you know, they're lucky to be with me. Like that's how I would think. Like that's my. It was wrong, but realistically, just being honest, like that's how I used to think, and I think depending on the person's expectations, if you're going into a relationship and you're thinking that, then automatically, like you're almost going to be subconsciously thinking, actually, you know what? If someone else comes along and they're more on par with what I think is my level, then I'm going to leave my options open. I'm not going to engage and get married because I'm keeping the options open.
And that's
like,
what I was like.
Okay.
And I feel so sorry for those poor guys that I dated after him, because they truly did want marriage. Like they were all in for that. And I was never going to be, because like you're saying, I was going, it's not that I'm not being horrible about them. They were all lovely people in their own aspect. We just weren't paired well. And I was always going, I always said to my friend, because then when they were like happy in a relationship, do you ever think that like you see someone, you're like, ooh, like would I leave my partner for them? And they were like, no. And I was like,
just you then.
Me neither. Yeah. So that's really true.
So with your mindset now, would you say your mindset now is more on terms of how it used to be?
What do you mean? In the olden days, back in
like old style relationships that, like, you know, the relationships that got a long shelf life and last for a long time. Do you think your ideas and morals and perspective aligns more with them rather than the modern day one of today?
Yeah, because I think the modern day one is like terrible. Terrible. From personal experience, it's not even like I sit there and judge it from the outside perspective. I've been there, done that. It's not fun. And I do know, I do see some people it works for. I do, like, I've known people who have had like one night stands and then got married and had kids. Although as I get older, most of those relationships have disintegrated.
So
again, that shows
the quality of relationships.
That shows, doesn't it? Yeah. But I'm not being judgmental towards anyone who's doing it in the new world way. I'm just saying I can just see it from like when you step back and you look. I think, I am more aligned with the like older way, but I would not want it to go back to that judgmental, where people were like, like the law was brought into it and people were just awful, and I don't think.
I don't think judgmental like that, as in like, you know, something could be executed as a point of like, this is the standard, and if you don't meet it, there's going to be punishment. I don't think like that, but I think you do need to be judgmental in the sense of actually looking at their way of doing things isn't right, and I don't really want to be associated to people like that. Like, I think that's different, because I mean, it's like friends, isn't it? If someone's known for doing something that's necessarily bad, like if someone's known for breaking hearts and you're hanging around with that person, another female might assume that you're that way inclined as well, because you are the company that you keep. You get me? So you've got that element as well. And like, if you've got a husband and he's hanging around with loads of single people, and then it's like, what has he really got in common? You know, these single people go out clubbing and he goes out with them now and then.
Yeah, that's
true. He's gonna have that element of doubt and like, what does he find in common? Why does he feel comfortable in that place and all that type of stuff? So I think to a degree, you do have to use some judgment, because it's realistic, isn't it? We judge our friends and we judge, people.
I think it depends how you're looking at the word judgment.
I
probably want to find a different word, but I can't think what word I'd find, but I know what you mean.
But I think in today's society, people are quick to say, "Oh, you're being judgmental."
Oh yeah, it's straight off the bat, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I thought it's important to like define what is like really judgmental, because if you're not executing something, if you're not actually doing something yourself, and you're not inflicting pain or punishment on someone as a result of your judgments, then you're not really being judgmental. You're just judging for your own personal benefit of knowing who to stay from and whatever. Do you get, man? I think that's an important thing to remember, because today, like, I mean, if you say, like, I don't know, there's people on Instagram, isn't there? Like, if they lose weight and then they say all of a sudden, like, you're fat shaming. Like that's what they say.
I have that.
That's what I mean. So like, it's not being judgmental. It's just that everyone wants to jump on something nowadays, and that's today's culture. Which is another thing that throws into relationships, because some people come into relationships with that mindset. Do you get me? And that's probably why they're not open and honest, because they're probably scared of being politically correct and like, what would this person think of them if they say this, or will it come out wrong, and things like that. You know what I mean? It's mad. So in terms of like, you know, when you meet someone and you think, you know, I'm dating someone, I'm physically attractive. So first of all, most of the time you have to be physically attractive. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah. I find that hard, but yes.
Yeah. So you have to be physically attracted. And then what would you say is the next box that they have to tick?
That your values align.
Yeah.
Because really, what's the point in going past anything else?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say values, what type? Give an example.
Like, so for me, it's my faith.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
But for me, like values, for example, like kindness towards people, you know, like if that person was, this has happened to me before, dating someone, been in a restaurant, the food was slightly a little bit not quite right, and then the waiter comes over and he screaming at them, and so rude. No, for me, I just like
warning signals.
Like, no, values wise, like being nice to people, like openness is a big one for me. Like, can that person actually, is that person actually emotionally aware of themselves? And I know that some people struggle with it, but it can be learned for sure. Like, you can develop that.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if I'd want to go into a relationship with someone who, I have been in relationships with people who don't want to tackle the hard things that are going on in life.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But this is where it's difficult, isn't it? Because some people might now look at what I kind of am looking for and be like, wow, your standards are so high. But I would way prefer to be single for the rest of my life and be in the wrong relationship, because that's so damaging.
It's true.
I don't hate being single. I dislike being single sometimes. Like, it doesn't affect me all the time, but some days I'm like, oh, so annoying. But it's like a fleeting moment. Whereas when you're in the wrong relationship, it's everything's affected.
Yeah.
And you don't become the person you were meant to be, which I think is really scary.
Yeah. Which brings us on to the next topic, which I was going to bring up as well.
Nice.
So growing together. Growing together is something that I think in modern day relationships just doesn't happen. Because often people have their own I think people have their own individual lives now. I think, like, you know, one person's got their one set of friends, another person's got their other set of friends, and they don't really mix that much. So they've almost got separate lives. There's nothing wrong with having separate lives, but there should be an element of, like, you know, your networks come together, your friends come together, but also you grow together. So if one person's developing and working on something, then you should be developing in some kind of area to better yourself, almost upgrading yourself. And I think, like, you know, especially I think more with men, I think women grow. I mean, as a whole, I think women grow faster than men and mature faster than men as a whole, because they're more socially aware. I think women naturally have that, you know, they want to be social, whereas men are more like, you know, as long as men have got what makes them happy, they're happy to work in their silos, they're happy to, like, work on their own. Like, that's why, you know, the same men like to build a castle, don't they? And they like to build a wall around their castle. And as long as they've got their games room or something that they can tinker with, mess around, and something like that, they're happy, they're content. Whereas women crave that social kind of interaction from other women. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a man. Like, a woman can get dressed up and she's generally dressing up, not for a man, but just because she wants to look good around her friends.
Yeah.
She's worried about what her friends will think. Do you get me? Like, so, whereas men, they don't dress for men all the time. They're dressed to be presentable, but a lot of the time, men dress nice for the hopes of a female glimpsing. Do you get me? If they're honest, like the amount of men that I've spoke to, even ones in relationships, like they say, like they're dressed fine. If you say, like, I'm having a little get together and it's only men, they're coming casual. As soon as you say there's a woman there, like that's it. They have to bring out the full works, like everything. Do you get me? Like, and a lot. It's not all men, but a lot of men are that way inclined.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like even discussions. Like men won't be themselves around certain women because they're not comfortable with discussing things, if you get me. Like, so I think men and women are designed different in that sense, but I think growing together, that needs to be an expectation from the start. Like that needs to be talked about from the start. Like, what are the expectations? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What do you want to achieve? Talking about your ambitions, all that kind of stuff. And you don't have to be super ambitious, but just like anything that you want, like if you want kids, if you want a house, you want to live in the country, do you want to live in the city? Like, how are you disciplining your children? Like, how are you going to teach them what's important? Like all these types of things. I just don't think they're talked about. But because you've been dating recently, would you say that, like, when you're dating, especially online, because of COVID and everything, would you say when you're dating, you feel comfortable talking about these topics? Or does it seem a bit too much to just come out and say, like, do you want kids on your first date? Like, how do you judge when it's too early to say something, or whether it's like, it's the right time, I need to know this now?
I think that is, there is a worry that it is too soon, and then that person is going to think you're too keen and be like, whoa, chill out, you don't even know me. But and the people I've been for example, had a few dates with, they're like, because they're really open about that stuff, even they're like, oh, if you don't like mind me asking, and that you can see it's the cautious side.
Yeah.
I don't mind it at all. Like if someone asked me, I wouldn't be like, wow, they want to get married. Like that wouldn't be my initial thought. Yeah. But I think people do worry about that. Yeah. And there is that I think it's just the worry of not coming. It's that play it cool, isn't it? Not coming on too strong.
Yeah.
But I think I would happily ask friends, would you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? So why is that any different? It's not saying, are you going to have them with me?
True.
It's just saying, do you want kids?
Do you want them?
Yeah. Not like with me.
Yeah.
You can joke about it and be like, I don't mean like with me, or like, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And again, I think as you get older, it gets different. I think people get more intentional. So like the people I'm dating are in the people, that sounds awful. I'm not dating loads of people at once. Yeah. The people I've spoken to are older.
Yeah.
So they're more intentional. They've had like past situations like we all have. And I think they just would prefer to know. I think they've been burnt by the fire. So they've learned to be more intentional. And also we're getting older, aren't we? Yeah. So you do just get more straight to the point.
Yeah.
Which is good. But yeah, it can be hard.
So what do you think in terms of like, coming back to expectations, what do you expect from someone today, like today's day and age?
No, I really struggle with this. I really, really struggle with this because I flip from being like, these are my standards, I'm not going to budge, to they're way too high, and why do I think that's, we're all human and it's not going to meet up to that. And then I'm like, well, I'm probably never going to meet anyone because they're so high now. But I really struggle with finding someone who I get on with, values align, X, Y, and Z, and that I find physically attractive. That is the big thing for me. I cannot align the two.
Okay.
I either find someone physically attractive and like, you're an idiot, or I'm like, you're amazing, but no.
So do you think that's a common thing? Like, someone could be good looking, but they haven't got the intellect to kind of like.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And then they think, I honestly think, this is my point of view, that when someone is so good looking, they just don't think they need to improve themselves in other areas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm like, and I find it so unattractive now. When you start to get to know someone, I'm like, you're like a child. I was like,
Well, they do say that about men, don't they? They do say men try to stay children as long as they can. Most men, they don't mature, do they? It's grown toddlers, really.
Yeah. So like, it's funny because even if like the most attractive man came along and was like, yeah, let's go out, and you might for a little bit be like, wow, incredible, because it's that physical attraction to start with. But then as you sit down and, you know, you sat opposite them at a table and you're having a conversation, that attractiveness disintegrates fast, I can assure you. It doesn't matter how chiseled their abs are or like how beautiful their jawline is. You start to see like inside and you're like, it's not pretty.
Yeah.
So there's only so much physical attraction can hold up. And is it the same with men and women? You know, if someone's stunning, beautiful, there's only so long they can hold that attraction, or is it different?
It's a hard one because I was very vain in that sense, in the sense of like, you know, if I was with a woman back then when I was single, when I was single, I was like, I met Stacey at like 18. So I'm talking 18 times. Someone had to be like super good looking. They had to be like the top girl in the room. It's like, you know, certain girls that look for the top boy, and they always look. I was the one. Like, yeah, like it's
I
crazy.
wouldn't go anywhere if my boyfriend wasn't really good looking. I'd be like, we'll just stay at home, which is horrible.
Yeah. But at the same time, I am a very deep, and I've always been, even when I was ignorant, and I was younger, I've always been a very deep person that needs that intellectual stimulation. So if someone doesn't stimulate me on that level, then we just can't. We can't.
Okay, so it is the same then.
Yeah, it is the same to a degree, but that's for me. But a lot of my friends, even now, people that I know, they're with people that look stunning, but they say they can't click with them. They can't, like, you know, they just don't. They just say like, and often, not all of them, but some will often have a female or a male that they talk to for intellectual intimacy. And I don't believe your partner can tick every single box of intimacy. I don't believe that. I believe in a perfect world they should, but realistically, intellectually, it's very different. It's like me and Stacey, we're very totally different people, totally different on so many different levels. But like, my growth is very aggressive. I'm very aggressive with my growth. I personally try to grow, like, you know, every yeah. Like, I'm setting goals and I'm smashing them early, but then I'll have to set new ones. And unless I'm chasing something, I'm bored. Do you get me? Like, that's just me. That's just the way I am. Whereas Stacey isn't. She's more content and laid back, and she's happy the way she is. She doesn't think there's need for improvement, kind of thing, unless it's keeping up with what I'm doing. Do you get me? Like, and that's kind of where we clash sometimes, because I used to have expectations of, like, you know, why isn't she like me? Why doesn't she, you know, want to do this? What I've even set up businesses for her before and says, yeah, run this. And I've set it up, gave it to her as a package, like running. And it's like, it doesn't push her. It doesn't motivate her. But at the same time, she's got other skills and attributes that are way above mine in those areas. Like, socially, she gets along with everybody. Like, I've never met someone that doesn't like her. Everyone loves her, kind of thing. And she's very good with children. She's very good with, like, you know, being organized. Yeah, like, all that kind of stuff. Whereas I'm totally the opposite. Like, not saying I'm anti people or nothing, but I'm very much like, if we're having a discussion about something and I don't agree about something, I'm gonna speak to them about it. Like, I'm gonna be quite confrontational, not in the fact of, like, you know, you want to fight or anything like that, but in the sense of, now I don't believe that's right, you know. Like, I believe you should look into that, and then I'll look for a debate, not to say I'm better or anything like that. It's just, I just believe that iron sharpens iron, and iron can only sharpen iron if it comes against something that pushes it or something that sharpens it. It's not gonna sharpen just on its own. And that's why I think often conflict is needed within a marriage. You need someone to contend with. Like, you 100% do, because if they're not contending with you, then they're not sharpening you, and then the relationship grows stale and dull. And that's the problem. And I think a lot of relationships nowadays, nowadays, relationships that don't really, like he says, when you was younger, you was trying to mold someone to be who you wanted them to be. And then also, you was trying to be who you thought they wanted you to be. So really, no one's sharpening each other because you're not even showing the real you to sharpen.
Yeah.
Do you get me? Like, so there's that aspect. So I think that's a major thing, and that can only go on for so long. And that's why I think there's always that, you know, the first 6 months of a relationship, it's all lovey-dovey and you're all happy. But then after that, it dies out. Like, it just doesn't last, does it?
No. And that's
And
true. You need to challenge each other.
Yeah. So in the sense of where you are now, right now, speaking to, like, when you're dating people, do you look for that, like, confrontation? What is someone like handling confrontation? Because I know you don't like confrontation, but you will do it if you have to. Well, and I think you've got better with it. But is that something that you look for? Like, how does someone say what needs to be said when they need to say it? Or do you look for, like, you know, are they quite laid back and passive in senses like that? You know, when someone wants to say something, but they don't really say what they think just because they want to keep the peace, or they don't want to be received in a certain way. Like, do you look for that?
No, not consciously, because it's not something that I really thought about. I know that people in the past that I've gone out with have been too passive, and I don't like that. I have dated someone who really was really opinionated, but opinionated in the wrong ways. Like that person who was shouting at the waiter, really opinionated.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's a different kind of thing. I think it was not a challenging way. It was just a like rude way.
Yeah.
But it's not something. No, I'm not. I think it definitely is needed. But it's probably not something that I was like on my radar straight away. Maybe it should be.
Yeah.
I find it hard. Isn't it? And this
So
is why I'm so glad I'm a Christian, because I'm like, God can deal with it, because this is so difficult.
Yeah.
I don't want to take this on. I was like, He can do it.
It is. So bringing us on to, all right, some tips and tricks that we can give to people. From our perspective, well, your perspective, what do you think is, like, you know, the top 3 tips that you can give for like dating? What are the first things that, you know, you should really consider?
No, I'm joking. Don't do it.
I'm surprised people aren't thinking that after this.
Guard your heart.
Yeah.
Bible verse right there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the rest of it is, but no, guard your heart, as in don't just give it away to everyone willy-nilly. Because one, it takes a long time to heal once you have, and two, not everyone is going to look after it and treat it in a nice way. So guard your heart. Don't give yourself away to that person so quickly. And speaking from someone who struggled with being impatient, I was so impatient and just wanted to go like, here we go, have it all. It's so much better to tiptoe to start with, even if it's not like flamboyant and it's not like, you know, doesn't seem like exciting. And it's that problem, isn't it? It's our culture kind of makes it look exciting and luring to be like all in straight away. It's like the passionate, like, oh, we just fell in love and got married and it was great. So tiptoe a little bit more would be my first one. Second one would be, first, make sure that you are happy by yourself. And that's so uncomfortable, uncomfortable. Because the big problem here with this one is there's nothing you can actively do in that season. You can, of course, be working on yourself, making yourself a better person, but you can't pursue something until you're happy with yourself. And I found that really tough. With every other thing in life, I've been able to just go out and work at it and grind and like get there. Whereas with this, I have just had to wait patiently, which I hate. It's like sitting in a waiting room and you're like, and of course, like I say, you're working on yourself, but you can't work on a relationship or that side of things, or like go out and pursue it and hunt it down, because it involves another person. Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
So that's a huge one. And then another one, it's always the third one that's so difficult. I think what I did was really good is I wrote myself a little contract. If you feel you fall into the wrong relationships quite a lot, which is what I did, I wrote myself a little contract. It has like 10 points on it of things that I just will not budge on. And that's not like, oh, he has to be 6'5", and like, it's not like things like that. It's things like, for me, he has to be a Christian, and have a faith. For me, he has to be like emotionally aware. There was one that was like, don't get in a relationship because it's winter. And I know that sounds hilarious, but that was low-key a thing. I also put on there, don't go back with the one ex-boyfriend who I'd been out with 4 separate times. He's on there. Don't go back to him. There's just loads of little different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's.
Yeah, there's some good ones. Yeah. There's some good ones, and I'd agree with all of them. I mean, like especially the working on yourself one.
Yeah.
That is a major key. Like whether people really believe in God or not. For me, like no sex before marriage. That's one of the biggest ones I can give to people, because
yeah,
as soon as you do that, it muddles things and confuses things. And when there's emotions involved and there's not enough logic, not saying it has to be 100% logic, but you need a high element of logic to foresee if it's going to last the test of time. So as soon as you throw sex in the mix, that muddles things. So I'll just add that one to that one. That's the only one, which is obviously there if you've got faith.
The one thing I was thinking about then, when I was saying when you level yourself at work on yourself, that does come with a bit of I feel like it needs to come with a bit of a warning attached to it, that as you do that, it becomes harder to find someone.
Yeah.
I mean, don't not do it, because it's amazing, isn't it? But definitely, there's plenty of fish in the sea. You end up from being in the sea to being in like a swimming pool, and you're like.
No, it reminded me of. Sorry, what it reminded me of when you says that. There's plenty of fish in the sea. Remember that episode of Undateables? And there's one scene and he's dating the girl, and he basically comes back and asks her, would you like to be with me? And he says, oh, there's plenty of fish in the sea for me, when she turns around and says no.
Yeah. Oh, anyway.
I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you for that.
Anyway. Yeah, no. So there becomes less people for you. Yeah. But like I said, it only takes one person, doesn't it? So don't stress. But you do. I went through this thing of like, oh my goodness, I've kind of massively outgrown the people who I was dating before. I'm not quite ready for the people who I want to be with, but I'm past the people that I was before, and you're in like a limbo.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
Yeah.
But
makes sense. Yeah. So you're going for older types now?
Yeah. Not like Hugh Hefner age. I mean, like, not that I go for Hugh Hefner anyway, but like early 30s. I'm 27. So early 30s.
So is that because of the maturity that you feel that the maturity level that you feel that you're at?
I think I could meet someone who was my age and there, but I definitely wouldn't go younger. But yeah, I think it's also like life experience as well, and I just think I think men mature slower, don't they? So
yeah, some. Yeah. But yeah, that was some really good points. So yeah, like it's interesting, isn't it? Like, because you don't really think about these questions all the time, and it's like
I do.
Do you?
Honestly, really? Yeah, but relationships is a big thing for me, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've had to journey with a lot. So for me, this is just like everyday conversations.
Yeah. And there's so much you could go into on this, but I think we've covered enough for this episode. And if we need to, and if people want to, we could do a deeper one where we go into more details and whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was a good episode.
Yeah, really good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And we're about to film your one now, actually, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go on and do that.
Cool.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Bye.